All right, welcome back to Inside My Canoe Head. Today we have Janet from Natural Disaster Survival Products joining us from the wonderful state of California. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, that's fantastic. So, listen, we'd love to understand who you are. Why did you start in the world of preparedness, and what does Natural Disaster Survival Products offer the world?
Okay. Well, who I am is a mother of three who lives in California and who has dealt with wildfires for years. But during the 2018 wildfire season, where people were dying, people up in Paradise perished, 88 people, people in Shasta County perished. Uh, all these things just affected me because I love this state. I love these people. And it's just shocking how these wildfires can move at a football field a second and just completely consume and, take over an environment, suck all the oxygen out. It's just a wild phenomenon. And I live very close to Malibu. And so when the Woolsey fire happened in that 2018, at night we live on a hill and we look overlooking a valley, and you can see the flames on other hills, mountains, coming down. It's hard to assess where they really are. And my children were looking out my bedroom window and asking what would we do if the fire came to us. And that's really what got me started. Like, how would I protect my family? So, I came up, well, I looked, researched, and I found that in Australia, they have these in-ground fire safety shelters that their government has put out performance standards for. And I got those, and I really tried to promote that idea because, if you just have a safe place to go when the fire is out of control, you will survive. So I've struggled with traction on that. I sell, much more of with the fire escape masks, the fire shelters that the U.S. Forestry Service uses, and things like that, and fire blankets and whatnot. But as far as fire safety is concerned, people have to evacuate during that time, and so I've tried to address all of the issues that come when you have to evacuate from a wildfire. And then, we've reached out. Now we cover all sorts of natural disasters, but that's where the origins began.
And it's so timely because, like you said, these last couple of years have been both from the frequency and severity of fires, I think, but also from the public attention.
Right.
And I think wildfires now hold a place that maybe only used to be held by hurricanes in Florida or the Carolinas or
Right.
Hurricane Sandy going in New York, where it's something that is devastating. It captures the attention. I mean, I'm a researcher and I have been for decades, and we still use Hurricane Katrina data
Hmm.
as probably the most primary example of what humans do, what their natural reactions are, and the failings of government
Right.
in response to disasters. And the series of California wildfires, even the inclusion of responsibility on your electrical company that came around for that, you start to see that data set emerging. So we see that, and I guess the big question I have for you is, why do you think it takes such a significant series of events like you had in the Paradise Fire and the different fires around Malibu to get people to start paying attention? Why don't you think the regular preparedness communication is successful?
I think in a nutshell, it's because everyone thinks it wouldn't happen to them. You know, uh, for example, when in the Mojave Desert area, I can speak to California, obviously,
Yeah.
but in the Mojave Desert, they had a significant earthquake a few years back. And after the earthquake, 45,000 people signed up for earthquake insurance because all of a sudden it affected them. So it is really the hardest message that if you prepare beforehand, you have a good chance of survival. But if you're left without a plan, without products that can help you, you could very well perish. And that's the message, to plan and prepare.
do you think, and I understand, and I think and I absolutely agree with you, the affected population are generally very, very responsive to calls to be ready for the next time around. So people will buy, you know, insurance. People will go to companies like yourselves to buy wildfire protection equipment, that type of thing, if they've been directly impacted.
Right.
I think a greater struggle that we have, both of us who are entrepreneurs in the disaster space, of getting people who aren't affected to look at a population that has been affected and say, this happened to them. I
Mhm.
may be next. How do we trigger that, do you think, to get people coming to you? Like, for example, people coming to your business to acquire your services, to acquire your products, to protect their family, who have seen others go through it, but haven't gone through it themselves. How do we break that barrier?
Well, that is the struggle. I mean, after the wildfire that went through Paradise, California, I went up there, and all those people were fully charged. I mean, 88 of their community members, it's a small community, 88 members of their community died. And so they were all gung ho about rebuilding and rebuilding safely. Um, I guess you just have to offer examples as to what the solution for this person who perished or, was injured, what their solution would have been if they had prepared in advance. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. What I was going to use it as an example, I don't know if you've seen the film The Last House Standing.
No.
It's produced by Mark the World Films. It's by a gentleman, George Siegel. I've been on his podcast. He's been on mine. He's out of Tampa, Florida. And
Mhm.
this is available online if you just Google The Last House Standing. It's about Hurricane Michael that hit Hurricane Michael or Ian, I forget, hit the panhandle of Florida in 2017 or 2018 and caused significant damage. And the picture of the film is there's one house standing.
Right.
All the others were knocked off their piers. All the other houses in the area are gone.
Hmm.
This gentleman's house is standing because he over engineered it for the risk hazard profile that he was exposed to. And he built his house not to building code, because building code is the minimal acceptable standard, right?
Right.
He built it to the hazard, not to the building code. And because he built it to the hazard, there were a bunch of marks down the side of his house. But those were other houses bouncing off of his as they were blown away.
Right.
And part of the film also goes to California to talk to a bunch of wildfire survivors and a couple entrepreneurs out there that have products related to that type of thing. So I think films like George's is a good example. But I think also, what we're trying to do here today is raising awareness. And I think I'd like to zero in on something you said that I think you and I have great in common, is the idea of the need to plan. That I often reflect that you can't purchase your way to preparedness, but you can plan your way to preparedness. And when you plan, you're likely to find some gaps in your readiness that can be filled by commercially available products, such as what you sell. But the plan has to come first. You know,
Absolutely.
you have to think your way through the hazard you're exposed to, and
Right.
think your way through what would what would I do? What would my family do? Like your children asked you, what would we do if the fires came to us? And I think you agree that planning has got to come first.
Anyway, as I was saying, planning is and doing a risk assessment is your first step. And then finding the products that will meet those needs is the second step. But it also, I want to add this, that you need to know how to use the products so planning has to include how to use it, because they're no good if you're in a crisis and you're trying to figure out how to put on a fire escape mask. So we give all that information on our site, how you use things. Also, I would say with our fire shelters that are used by the U.S. Forestry Service, I have big disclaimers and notifications on my site that you have to know how to use this. It is useless if you don't.
Yeah.
So, you have to prep, you have to plan, you have to have knowledge of how to use the products. So that is absolutely critical. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money.
And I think that's true. And it's very much sense when people buy first aid kits. I'm
Right.
going to buy the commercial off the shelf first aid kit. And a lot of them from reputable distributors are great. They're great quality. They have a range of capability within them. But if you don't back that up with a first aid course, you've got a brick to hold your door open, full of a
Well,
whole
that's
bunch
true.
of things that probably are helpful, but you have no idea how to employ.
That's true. Uh, yeah. So prepping, planning, and knowledge
Yeah.
are the three keys that you have to have.
And this is and a question I put a blog out this morning, and I was writing about, preparedness is the art of placing order into chaos. And it's a personal responsibility. And part of that was sitting there thinking about, okay, if you don't know how to use the products, then how do you know the products fill the needs you have? And
Right.
it just rings true that so many people will expend great deal of money um, to get gear, great gear, quality gear, but they unpack the fire mask box as the smoke is surrounding them. And they're trying to read the directions of how to
Right.
properly put the hood on, breathe it out, etc. It's kind of like I'm a veteran of my career. I mean, you practiced repeatedly with the gas mask so that
Right.
when you needed to use it, you didn't have to think. It was just natural set of things that you do. And I think that's a huge uh part that is missing is that we don't it's like life cycle management, right? You buy a product, you use a product, you time expire a product because some products do have expiry dates on them that they have to be regularly replaced.
That's right. The fire escape mask is one of them.
Exactly. Anything with any type of carbon-based filter or particulate-based filter has a time stamp on it. Now, will it likely work afterward? Well, it's very much like food expiry dates. They'll probably be fine, but that's the point of legal liability, after which the company's not going to back it up should you decide to eat the product, a month after mayonnaise goes bad. But it's a lot of things. I'm looking at your website and you seem to have quite a different array. What is the most popular or most recommended from your perspective uh piece of equipment that you offer?
Well, that is an interesting question because we really do span, like I sell air to water generators, which deal with contaminated water supply so that you don't have to be consuming the water from your water supply. You don't have to be drinking bottled water, so you're not consuming the plastic particulates. It'll just generate pure water from the air. So I sold a significant number of those to affected areas like train derailment areas and things like that. But I also sell these Mama Bear Survival Essentials kit, and they can be customized. And I think that it's a very thoughtful product as it stands, but you can customize it still. So we have renewable sources of energy. We have things to keep you warm. We thought out like what when you're a parent taking your kids to a shelter or someplace to get out of a danger zone. What are the products that you're going to need there? So that's one of the more pre-planned products as me as a mother, put together. So we sell a number of those. And honestly, we sell a lot of fire blankets. So, for the kitchen, we just sell a lot of those.
And
Also, and we're introducing new products all the time. So we have new flooding products. We have these saltgrass modular container homes, which we were talking about. Your friend in Florida. These homes are built to withstand an F3 tornado. So and it's a very smart way to rebuild after a disaster. It's done off site. It's just put in place on your site. You can completely customize it. Um, so we were like a superstore, I would guess, for survival products.
well, I think that's important to note because, like you said, if you plan first, and part of planning is understanding your risk profile, the hazards to which you're exposed, and the likely outcomes if those hazards are realized, put you in a position to say, hey, listen, I'm exposed. I mean, flood gear is great, but if you don't live in a flood zone, like where I live, if I flood, it's several hundred feet above sea level, and we have NOAA level worries if I get flooded. So I don't worry about flooding.
I don't
Um,
either. I live on a very high hilltop, so
right. So if you flood, we're going to have far greater worries
Yeah. Oh,
than
yeah.
a
Then the
dike
whole
for
valley
water
is
or
going to be
something.
flooded, right? No, but if you, we if you live in an area where you know that there's going to be a significant amount of rain and you have rivers and lakes or whatnot that could rise up and get into your home, then we can help you solve that problem before it happens. That type of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's important because I don't, and I know several parts of the United States of America is having a challenging insurance market right now. In
Yes.
that getting overland flooding insurance or various different types of storm damage insurance is becoming prohibitively expensive, if not impossible at all.
Or you'll just
And
be completely denied.
yeah, or
Yeah.
just denied. Or government programs are marginally there, but and not covering a complete loss, not basically making somebody whole and putting them back where they are. And part of what we do what I think is an important strategy is to understand as you're exposed to that flood, when you have these things, have you ever had a conversation with the insurance company about whether having some of your equipment in a home might make somebody more insurable?
I have had those types of conversations, but they don't really seem to work like that. Um, they, they do their risk assessments and um, I don't think I haven't really come across anybody yet, and I haven't done that deep a dive, but I haven't come across anybody yet that is interested in um, that, in in offering to people with high risk areas. But one thing I will say is that there is one fellow who told me, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think. It was a fire mitigation product that he was able to cut. This is a famous man, an author in LA, and he was able to cut his homeowner's insurance by over $100,000.
Yeah.
Now I can't for the life of me remember what that product was. Um, but yeah, so I guess in some cases they are. I have not personally had success finding that.
But I,
Like I thought with the in-ground fire safety shelters, that would be great. But they don't really don't care if you die in the fire. They care about your home
well,
and
yeah,
what
because
happened.
they're not insuring your life; they're insuring your
Right.
property. But and I mean, it's things along, and we discussed this before that the part that bothers me about wildfire is number one, we build in the wildland urban interface with no
Mhm.
precautionary. Now, here in Canada, as a result of our wildfire season that we had last year, a long available but largely unknown product called Fire Smart Canada is now very popular and suggested by most of our provincial subnational governments. And it's basically a several stage process about how individuals can on their own protect their home.
Mhm.
It's about clearing shrubbery, having nothing
Right.
combustible close to your home. It's about having sprinkler systems on your roof to defeat embers in times of wildfires in the area. And it's a progressively more expensive program as you get to greater and greater protection. But things like there shouldn't be a tree within 30 feet, 10 meters of your house,
Mhm.
like literally none. That space needs to be separate because 90% of the fires that start on the wildfire data are from embers,
Yes.
right? 10% are from direct combustion from the heat of the fire. And if you keep the fire 30 feet away, that number almost goes down to zero for
Mhm.
direct combustion. And, but the part that gets me is that we know how to build fireproof homes. We do
Correct. Yeah.
steel, glass, and concrete. It doesn't light. But
Right.
what we do, and I'm sure you have the same issue in California, is we had a recent large fire in 2016 in Fort McMurray in northern Alberta, lost a portion of the town. Luckily, everybody got out. Everybody in the town was evacuated. However, they rebuilt the houses the same vinyl siding.
Mhm.
And I mean, we do dumb things and then wonder why bad things happen to us on a rinse and repeat cycle.
Yeah, it's like you keep putting your hand on this hot stove. But I will add that that is why I really like these modular, saltgrass modular container homes, because they're built with steel, glass. You can have special glass that's fire
Yep.
resistant. And they're bolted to the ground. So, for seismic activity or hurricane, I mean, this is just I think, a terrific solution for people who want to live in these, beautiful areas, but don't want to have to start from scratch after they've lost everything.
Right. And I think and I don't know the reason why, and I've never read an explanation, but the recent fires in Hawaii, where that entire
Right.
neighborhood was burned. There was one house by the shore that didn't burn. Now, to this day, I don't know why. I didn't look any different in the pictures from what was there before. It's probably just dumb luck is
Dumb luck.
probably the reason why that
Yeah,
works. But I think we know that we want to live in beautiful places.
correct.
We also know how to live in beautiful places safely. I'm just not sure what the argument is that's going to persuade people to make that connection. So if I want to live in the mountains of California in an area where there's wildfire risk,
Hmm.
if I follow those fire smart principles and I have that 30-foot barrier around my house with no combustibles, my house is built out of non-flammable material, and I have a closed ventilation system to protect the interior from that, then yeah, if a wildfire hits, it burns the neighborhood trees down, but my house is perfectly fine to occupy. We can do that.
I mean, I only hesitate because in this area, when we have the Santa Ana winds, or devil winds as they're called up north, these winds, I can, they just, the fire creates its own environment.
Yeah.
It sucks all the oxygen out of the air, so you can die from asphyxiation. The smoke is absolutely lethal. So I guess if you're saying, if you're just trying to save your home, doing that brush clearance and, maintenance of your property so that fire, can't slowly encroach. But if you have a wind of fire coming at you, you need a better plan than that. I don't know if you have those types of winds in Canada. I've experienced them here, and it's surreal just how quickly your environment can change.
Oh, absolutely. There
And
are
in
some.
California, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in California, we do have strict, you have to have your brush cleared, I think, by June 6th.
Okay.
So yeah, it's enforced. I don't know about the tree though. I don't think they have any
Yeah,
enforcement on tree.
we don't, there's a whole series of things in around towns having, I mean, we know that building 100-meter or 300-foot wide fire breaks around communities works. Some of them are recommended to be upwards of a kilometer, which is, half a mile wide. I think that may be slightly excessive, but we
Mhm.
know that when we put non-flammable breaks in between wildfire areas and residential areas, we don't change the probability to zero. I don't think we can do that, but we greatly reduce the probability of that type of an event happening, and at least give the first responders a bit of an upper hand in time to
Yeah.
deal with it. I
Well,
mean,
that's very important. Absolutely. Yeah.
right. And let's be honest, wildfires aren't new,
Mm.
right?
No, but they are exponentially worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, parts of our country are going through a drought right now that's been on for about 10 years, 8 to 10 years, and it's put a lot of at risk. We also don't have a very good forest management problem. Part of the issue, without delving too far into the weeds, is that we have a very valuable timber industry. So
Mhm.
nature has a naturally diverse forest of
Right.
coniferous, deciduous trees, all these different types of trees. Some are slow burn, some are not. The pine tree, for example, can't reproduce unless the pine cones get 350-degree Fahrenheit heat. So you have to have forest fires to reproduce pine trees. This is part of a natural thing. But when we clear cut our forests, we replant them with single valuable species. So we eliminate nature's diversity and replace it with a single species, thus
Mm.
again reducing the ability of nature itself to deal with it. But there's a lot of things like that that go down the range. But when we think about reach, where just an honest question, where is your biggest customer base? Would you say, geographically speaking?
United States. Yeah.
Any
There-
specific area of the United States that?
Well, certainly California, Texas, Florida, um, Arizona, yeah, Oregon. Um, Oregon was just massively affected by a wildfire not that many years ago. Um, I'd say the western and southern states probably more than the Northeast. Um, I would say that, yeah. And I haven't done much business in Minnesota or the Canadian adjacent
Yeah.
states.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you do any international business?
I do with Canada and Mexico. Yeah, I have not reached to Europe or South American countries. It's just, logistically, it's with shipping and whatnot. It's just not really cost effective, I would say.
No, probably not. And a lot of the products are have reasonably. Do you- and I guess the best way to frame that is how competitive do you find the marketplace right now for your products?
Um, I find that company it is competitive, but I'm unique in the diversity of products that I have. A lot of these survivalist websites appeal to a certain demographic in this country. I try to have a broader appeal to homeowners, people with children, people who want to make it through a disaster and live to rebuild or see the other side of it. So yeah, I have a slightly different demographic and business model as far as who I'm reaching. I don't go for people who are more like I guess a doomsday prepper or things like that. There are other sites that cater to that type of a customer base. So I'm more about homeowners and people with things that they want to protect and children's lives that they want to save and their own, you know.
Yeah, I like the lead
Is that
title on my.
delicate enough? Did you understand what I was trying
Yeah,
to
no,
say?
exactly. Well, I'll be a little bit more blunt. On my side, I call it evidence-based preparedness,
Mhm.
non-apocalyptic education and advice for rational people.
Yes,
That's the
thank
way
you.
I
That's a better
phrase it,
way of
right?
saying it. Yeah.
And like I say, listen, if you think we're about to have societal collapse, then there are people who speak to you, but I'm not one of them.
Hmm.
If you think we're on the edge of nuclear Armageddon, there are people that will speak to you, but I'm not one of them. If
Right.
you're a rational, intelligent individual who continues to want to live their life and chase their dreams, but you understand that you live in a chaotic environment and you're exposed to a bunch of risks and you'd like to protect you and your family, this is where we can help. And I think one part of your website that I was looking at earlier is your pre evacuation preparation steps
Right.
and your checklists, your survival guides, as you call them.
Right.
How did you come about putting that package together for your survival guides?
Well, I work with FEMA, and I did borrow their materials, and then just research, and then thinking, okay, me as a mother, what would my real world needs be? Like, if, for example, we know as a family where we're going to meet if there's an earthquake. We all know where to gather. Um, so we do these types of prep things for ourselves. Where I'm more of that mindset. Obviously, we know what we're going to do if there's a fire. We know what roads we're going to take to evacuate and where we're going to meet and where there is ground without any brush that we could have a fire escape mask on or one of the U.S. Forestry Service fire shelters. We know how to use all that stuff. So we're different in that we have definite plans. We are going to survive. And so those are the type of people that I'm trying to appeal to. If we take saving our families seriously, and we have a customer base that takes caring for their families seriously. And so that's who we are, and that's who we're attracting and targeting.
And I think, and I love your idea as you express it there about everybody understands their role. And this is
Right.
how we do it in my house is that it'd be really cool if we could communicate when an emergency happens. Always easier to do that. But the rationale is we may not have access. The reality is we may not have access to cell towers. We may
Right.
not have access to satellite communications or anything else. So
Hmm.
every member of my family, now I'm a little bit, my children are older. They're in their 20s. One of them still lives with me, but everybody knows exactly what their responsibility is.
Hmm.
Nobody needs to be told what to do. We're all old enough to figure out that, yeah, this is a significant event. I need to get after it and do what I'm supposed to do. So, yeah, communicating, as you say, would be great if we had access to cell towers. But we had a tornado go through here, Ottawa, six of them actually in one day, which was quite the
You're
event.
kidding me. Oh
Nope.
my God. That's
Yeah, we
unusual.
it's now and several times a year event that never used to really happen all that often. So we had six come through in one day, and one of them went through a neighborhood and took out the cell tower.
Hmm.
The interesting part of that is it's not just the local people who couldn't call for help, but the paramedics and the fire service used the cell tower as their rebroadcast station. So the paramedics and the fire department sitting on site of the emergency could not communicate with anybody outside their site, not their own people, not the hospitals, not anybody. It was a
Well, they should
total,
have a backup plan with walkie-talkies. I mean, my family, every have walkie-talkies as a backup plan.
yeah. The emergency services didn't even have that. Now they've stepped over that and they have it now. But the question that rose out of it is, it gets back to what you said about people know what to do. Like people
Yeah.
know how to put their masks on in your family.
Hmm.
They don't need to be shown. They already know. People know what the evacuation route is. They know where to meet.
Correct.
And this is one thing that I throw out there for those because there are some people in the audience and some people in who are economically challenged and who don't have the ability to expend funds in preparedness. And this is why I say what I do here at Inside My Canoe Ed, it's always free. I've got 270 plus episodes. It's kind of like all the information that you offer for free on your website, right? We're
Right.
not charging people to read this whole plan about steps and everything that should go through. And providing people that information gets them to understand that while finance may prevent you from buying a few pieces of equipment, preparedness is largely about attitude and about creating a plan and accepting personal responsibility. I mean, I work at length, both my company and in a researching field with the professional emergency management, like you said, dealing with FEMA. Fantastic people, they care, but they're exceptionally low capacity compared to what public expectations are. You know, the public expects the government is going to come save them. And it's not that the government is bad. It's not that the government doesn't care. It's that there's simply nowhere near enough individuals to provide that kind of rapid response that people are expecting, which is where you come in to providing
Yeah,
this
you know,
information.
it is a hard thing to say because the people who work for in this country, FEMA, are so well-intentioned and dedicated to what they do. But how many times does it have to be proven that the government is not going to come in and save you necessarily? It's just
Yep.
not. You have to be self-reliant. You have to know for
Yep.
yourself what you're going to do.
And this is what I keep coming back to about the need for self-reliance, preparedness is that it's not about the ineffectiveness or the lack of desire and helpfulness from the people who work in emergency management, be it your first responders, et cetera. I don't know what the data is near you. For me, it's 5,500 to 1 is the population ratio to population to on-duty first responders.
Mm,
Now, for normal days events or short surge events, they're quite capable of managing that. That's an appropriate ratio.
right.
Significant events, they get overwhelmed in 60 seconds or less. You know,
Yes,
911 doesn't get answered simply because
correct.
they can't answer the volume of calls or the
There's
call
just not
system
the
is down.
bandwidth. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when you're put in that position, the government hasn't failed. The government's doing whatever they can, but that opens up the discussion to, okay, that's the preparedness gap. This
Mhm.
is where it's your responsibility to step up to the plate, to understand, you know, what risks your family have. And I'll add this, not all families are the same. Some families are multi-generational.
Hmm.
Some families are multi-location. For example, you could have a senior member of the family in a care home not too far from your home.
Right.
You probably should include them in your preparedness plan as well.
Yeah, if at all possible. Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to throw this in there
Yeah.
because I remember after Hurricane Katrina, and our FEMA was just completely overwhelmed and stretched thin, and not very confident at that time. And this person who was trapped in his home, like on an upper level with the floodwaters, and these people came to save him, and they were Canadian. And he said, "Well, where the hell are the Americans? The Canadians came in to save us." So I just wanted to throw that in there. I always thought that was a nice Canadian story.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's actually, we use it periodically because it was a Canadian naval ship that was offshore of Louisiana that send in teams to help
Yeah.
do that. And I mean, it's a couple of days sail because it just happened to be somebody who was in the vicinity and hanging out in the Caribbean. But that's part of understanding that even at the municipal level, that there are shouldering agreements and support agreements with neighboring municipalities. So I live in the city of Ottawa. There is really no other town within an hour's drive of us. I mean, we're a million people.
Hmm.
There's nobody else. It's going to take them a couple hours to get organized and drive here to help. So we're really quickly overwhelmed, and assistance is a long way away.
Right.
Um, and so it forces people to think about, and the question that I ask them, that I try to get them to think, is, what does your world look like when you no longer have access to services? So when the power, the water, the gas, utilities, it's all shut off. What does
Right.
your world look like? Are you okay? How long are you fined for? When do you think you'd have to walk out of your front door and ask for help? And it just gets the individual thinking about their situation. You know, how does their family define? They could have elderly in the home. They can have a member of their family with a significant medical issue that may require climate controlled medication or immediate access to power. Like, they can't be without a power for 15 minutes,
Hmm.
or life-saving devices are at risk. So it's such individualistic, but the general principles are largely the same. Self-reliance.
Self-reliant. And I'm glad you brought, people needing medical devices and things like that, because having your own power supply
Mhm.
is a really wonderful thing. We sell the portable power stations, that can be recharged by solar panels.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, you can keep your refrigerator running, you can keep your CPAP machine going at night, you can keep your devices charged. I mean, this is, for a lot of people, just a wonderful thing to have.
Well, and I
And
can advocate, and
wherever
I
you want
can,
to go, they're great for.
I can advocate. Like, I don't sell any of these products, which is why I love having people like yourself on the podcast, because I don't sell the physical type of goods, but I have a similar generator. I have solar panels at
Hmm.
home, and they have been useful when and I run a business online. When the power's out, my business still needs to be up. Like, I can't afford to be down for days at an end.
Right.
So I hook up my modem,
Yes,
my
me too.
internet modem, to the power supply,
Me too.
and
Yeah.
I hook up my laptop. And it's literally as if there was no power outage. I'm carrying on working from home.
Right.
The power's out, but the cords are running outside. The solar panels are laid out on the back deck. The power supply is hooked up, and I like the battery portion too, because I can have it inside the house,
Right.
which is why I'm a keen advocacy for portable power stations
Mhm.
versus gas powered generators.
Right. Well, gas
Huge.
powered generators are one of the most dangerous products on the market, if not the most.
Yeah.
You can count every year the number of deaths of people who died from them. And then what do you do if you can't get more gas? Because they're going to they shut off before they run out of gas. And if you have no more gas to put in there, you're out of luck. But got the sun, you can just recharge.
Well, it's an argument that I absolutely agree with. Like, people, I would say to people, okay, you're using a 3,500 watt gas generator. Okay. How much gas is that for 72 hours? And the guy goes, "Oh, it's like 60 liters." I said, "Do you currently store 60 liters? That's like that's like a lot of gasoline sitting around explosively in your house
Yeah,
or in your garage.
yeah,
That gasoline is only good for about 6 months if it's not conditioned or rotated. And then what happens after that?" Because gas stations need power to get gas out of the ground. So unless they have their own power backup, gas stations are useless places to go when the
right,
power's out because they can't get the gas out of the ground. And the
correct.
few that do, those are what you see on TV of, hour-long lineups, fist fights at the gas pumps, and a whole bunch of other things. Do you really want to be in the middle of that? Or do you want to be sitting at home with your powerhouse 2 and waterproof power station with your solar panels in the back? Now, you're obviously not going to keep your entire house running. This isn't a house level generation,
Well, me
but
personally, I am. I have 7,000 watts of power available to me at any time.
most people. But what I'm thinking, like, what I try to tell people is a phrase I use is called a minimum power profile.
Yeah,
To look around your house based upon you, your family, how you operate, how you live, what you need, determine what that minimum watts or amps that you need to live comfortably through a disruption. That informs you the size of the generator you need, the size of the solar panels you need, because somebody would say, okay, power generation, I get it. Do I buy a 500 watt, a 1500 watt, a 3000 watt? Like, how much do I need? And I would be always say, like, these things are not cheap, very valuable, but they're fairly expensive.
they
So
are. They are expensive. Yeah. But what I
rationally
like
think,
about the powerhouse too is that you can, if you're an overlander or someone like that, you can use it for recreational things.
yeah,
You can use it to, they have 60,000 hours of, energy available in them. So it's a pretty cool product if you can, swing it. But if I may,
yeah,
I'd like to tell you about the Jack on Lux rechargeable light bulbs
yeah, go
because
ahead.
huge hassle when the lights go out is fumbling around for candles and flashlights, and you just want to be able to see the room. So
Hmm.
these go in your light bulbs, and when the lights go out they just stay on, and you have light. You can function as in the dark as a homeowner.
I'm looking at those on your website. I'd never heard of that before. That's quite the interesting 8 to 10 hours
Pretty
of chart.
cool.
Yeah,
I put it, they're in all of my lamps in my home.
yeah,
So they don't work well in pendant lights. I will say dimmable lights, don't use them for that. But in
yeah.
your lamp, uh, throughout your house, you can keep your lights on.
And I think that's a great solution because a lot of times, like, I actually advocate for lighting for a safety perspective
Sure.
because injuring yourself whacking into things or walking or tripping over things is a pretty significant risk, especially
Yes.
if you're a little bit older, a little bit less mobile, because you're not used to navigating your house in the dark. You're used to navigating your house. And when you have a flashlight, you have a beam of light,
Hmm.
but you normally live in a room where it's a cascading light that lights up the entire room.
Right.
So it's an entirely different perspective. So this is a fantastic idea to put in the light bulbs. I never thought of something like that. I'll
Yeah.
definitely.
I think that not having light is a big pain point. It just stinks. So this is what I just think these are and we have priced them at a very good competitive price point, because I just think they're so useful for people. And you don't even need a lamp. You could just, wet the tip of your finger and light it that way. It comes with the different components. You can screw it in and hang it, or if you have a lamp that's not in the closed circuit, it comes with a plug that you can close circuit the lamp. It needs a closed circuit in order to
Yeah, yeah.
work. Um, so yeah, they're just the greatest thing, I think.
And I think having an array of products like that, it's because when we talk about the fact that you create this plan, you talk about the fact, and we discussed about, how do I want to live my life through a power outage? Which the way we characterize it here at Inside My Canoe Head is we talk about the most likely but the least dangerous event that could occur to you, right? Because in reality, we can prepare for 50 different events that you might be exposed to. Nobody wants 50 different plans. Nobody's going to do 50 different plans.
Correct.
Nobody's going to include 50 annexes to your family preparedness plan
Nobody's going to
for each.
remember them either.
No, not at all. So what we kind of developed was this spectrum idea where at one end of the spectrum, you have your most likely but least dangerous event, which we categorize as a power outage. They happen, they're inconvenient, they cheese you off. They're
Yeah.
likely not to cause death and destruction, but they are impactful and something that you have to prepare for. On
Right.
the
Well, if
other
you
end of
have
the
medical
spectrum,
devices, you should definitely invest in one.
well,
I mean,
they're
that then
impactful to
it could
some,
be life.
absolutely.
What's
The
that?
other the other end of the spectrum would be your least likely, but your most dangerous, the one that causes. And for us, uh, my research indicates that's evacuation. I
Correct.
call it the most dangerous situation that a family can go out because they're leaving their shelter in place location. They're leaving everything, their belongings. They're trusting, they're taking what they can on a route to an unknown or uncertain destination, unaware as to whether their home will be there when the emergency is over or they'll
Mhm.
have to start from ground zero.
Right.
So if we provide guidance to people to train for the two extremes of the spectrum, logically saying then they're going to be ready to, by default, to deal with something that may be in the middle. And that's kind of the idea that we put out for how do we get people ready for the multitude of hazards that they may face without, like you said, trying to get them to create plans that they simply won't remember.
Right. I mean, some disasters require you to evacuate. Some require you to shelter in place. Um, so we address both of those
Yeah.
scenarios. If you have to evacuate, then our Mama Bear Go Bag Essential Kit has renewable power sources, with solar panels on it, so you can at least keep your phone charged and your um, laptop charged, things like that. Yeah, sometimes it's good to prepare yourself, and other times you can look at what other people have planned out for you and, sort of be confident in relying on that. Like I feel like people can with the Mama Bear because it has, an electric blanket that's USB powered. It has water cleaning solutions, a water filter. It's just all sorts of things to address power, your basics like shelter, warmth, food, water, and then other things that make so you can communicate and keep in touch with the power supplies and things like that. Uh, yeah, and the fire escape mask. We haven't touched on the importance of a fire escape mask. Maybe this would be a good time to do that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And then especially I'll just lead into it to say that a lot of your customers and a lot of people out there live in high density housing. So when you live on the 22nd floor of a condo building and your stairwells are full of fire or smoke, sorry, and you need to get down, fire
right.
mask.
Because fires kill 80% of people who die in a fire die from the smoke.
Yeah.
It is so lethal with the particulates that are coming in. And even if you don't perish immediately, you'll likely have long-term effects when those particulates get into your lungs. So a fire escape mask, we have them in our go bags. I just think it's the biggest no-brainer. I don't fly without one. I, always have the ability to have fresh air so I don't perish.
Minorly important.
Yeah, especially if you're flying Boeing. I'm just kidding.
I'm not.
No, I just I'm so real. I just carry it with me. I don't even think about it. I just always have a fire escape mask. It's in my car everywhere.
Yeah. And um I try to deal, like I said, we deal with rational people living intelligent lives, which means 80+% of people in Canada, and you're approaching that in the United States, live in urban or suburban areas. So you're going to live in high density neighborhoods. You're going to live in situations where um, community matters. And I think this is the last area we'll cover on today's conversation is speaking about community. Do you see an avenue for you to get into community preparedness, supplying community organizations with information and material to reach out to their populations?
I have not done that, except through my work with FEMA. Um, but yeah, I mean, after Paradise was a big deal in California, and so I went up there a number of times after that, and they did a whole uh, community, rebuilding planning event. Um, but so to make that more resilient, I think I lost my train of thought. But um, as far as community, I would say that community preparedness is very important, but it also can be lethal. With a community, because if you have narrow roads and somebody's car breaks down or somebody just freaks out or whatever, you're stuck. And so again, it goes back to what am I going to do if that happens? And so, uh, and if you're in a fire escape mask would be perfect for that. Fire blankets would be perfect for that. In that event.
And that's the when I speak about community and speaking to, for example, sometimes the preparedness word is hard to get through on the general announcement. So opportunities exist to go to say, hey, you know, the, the equivalent of the Paradise Neighborhood Association. Hey, listen, here we are. This is what we do. We can help your community become prepared instead of reaching out to the people who live in a location, like the people of Malibu. Well, what about talking to the organizations that represent the people in Malibu?
Oh
Because
yeah. Well, I've definitely done that. I've had extensive conversations with the mayor and city council, and I've sold quite a bit to Malibu. Uh, they're right next door, so I do have that ability to speak with them directly, and I'm known there, and they know me.
and I think that's the benefit of getting known. And what we try to do is use the champions of society that exist. For example, it doesn't make sense for me to go into a church to talk about preparedness because they don't know me. I can say all the titles that I want and all the things that I have, but when I get the pastor to speak about preparedness and to speak about the need to adopt a prepared life and become resilient, as we say, become self-reliant, you start the education process through the champions of community that exist. You start spreading the word,
That's
and
a
then that
very good point. Yeah.
and that generates interest.
Yeah.
And you and I both exist first and foremost to help the people around us and to help people take care of themselves and their family. Obviously, there's a capitalistic side to it, and that's perfectly fine in a modern society, but we exist to help people. And
Right.
sometimes the barrier to helping more people is the fact that people don't know, number one, they don't know you're there, which is broken through advertising, et cetera, but that they don't understand your value. And what I found one interesting way to do that is to find these key leadership nodes within the community and say, hey, listen, you know, the local community neighborhood association that runs sports leagues and runs fairs and runs things like that, that is a fantastic organization to get into. I think people like you and I are far more successful in spreading the preparedness message going that route than we are talking to elected officials. As much as that is valuable,
Well, yeah, elected
you know,
officials can't promote you, but that's
yeah,
actually a really wonderful point, because influencers are so important in marketing. There's not too many influencers that I know of in our field of uh, sales. um,
no, there aren't.
yeah,
But when you think about the influencers who matter to the people, your target population, the people in the population, they trust, right? It's
right.
a phenomenon called social capital. I study it at length on a research field, and it's about norms of reciprocity and trust in relationship. So people turn to trusted sources in times of an emergency. Their pastor, their community organization, various faith leaders, trusted networks, organizations they belong to. Those are where people turn in times of emergency. And those are great access points for people like you and I to spread the preparedness message. I
That's
just
a
think
wonderful point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
it's a wonderful opportunity to expand the areas that you get involved in and expand your exposure to the population to get the message out. And
Right.
that's the barrier. People, when they see the message, they understand the message,
Yeah.
and your name or your voice comes through a trusted voice. They may not know you, but if the person they trust says yes, Janet is an articulate individual, she's a trusted individual, she's a caring member of our society, and she's here to help, that can go a long way to breaking through that communication barrier.
Right. We attend a lot of safety fairs. There's a lot of safety fairs in throughout California. And I know that when I go there and I can speak to the people directly and explain why these products are important, why they will help them survive, the importance of planning and prepping, then the sales are great. It is a matter of being able to communicate, and yeah, using influential local people. That's a really strong point. That's a very good point, because communicating is how you get the information out, bottom line.
Well, it is, and it's an element of marketing, but it's also an element of community services to provide that information to say, hey, drop over to the website. I've got some great information available for you there. You'll find other things you may find interesting, but at least you'll find some basic start point information, because FEMA is great. Public Safety Canada is great. But when FEMA sends a message at 330 million people, the same message, it's largely intentionally vague, and it's
Yes,
difficult to be effective at the municipal level.
right. When so often customization is everything within this type of prep.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same as you say. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking your time today to join us here at Inside My Canoe Head. I appreciate this, and I'm sure lots of listeners will love it. Your website is naturaldisastersurvivalproducts.com. Thanks again for joining us.
I really appreciated this conversation. It was really great. Thank you so much.
All right, take care, and maybe we will get to do it again soon.
I'd love it. Take care.